What's up, Houdat Nation, and welcome into Saints Daily. This is your home for everything to do with the black and gold. My name is Tim, and today marks 1 week away from the NFL draft. No more maybes, no more predictions, no more stories, mocks, and just over 1 day, because this is usually released in the mornings, right? 1 day and a few hours, we are going to know who the Saints drafted in the first round. And we're going to know in just over 10 days who the Saints drafted in total and what their draft class looks like. I am excited for actual NFL news. But for now, let's continue to talk about the what ifs. And one of the questions that I have is, are there any players on this Saints roster that may end up getting traded at some point in time shortly after the draft? And the reason why I'm not thinking anything's going to happen before the draft, just league trends. If you look back historically, players aren't getting traded this time of year. If you look back the past few weeks, there hasn't been anything going on. There's no free agent signings, there's no trades, there's rumors and there's dust and there's smokescreen, but there's no movement. And it's because no team wants to make that move this early before the draft starts. No team wants to sign a free agent right now, knowing that they may draft somebody that they're going to replace them with in a few days. So I don't expect anything to happen, but there are 4 players on this roster that I wouldn't be surprised to see the Saints move on from after the draft or maybe even during the draft. We'll start off with the first one being Spencer Rattler. And as a Saints fan, last year I thought Rattler did a fantastic job with the hand he was dealt. I don't think the team around him was really gelling. You could see all the penalties. I think that Kellen Moore grew a lot as a coach throughout the year, but at the start of the year, I don't think that Kellen Moore was really who he was towards the end. I think the strength of schedule was absolutely also much harder for the games that Rattler played, and that might have been by design, but I don't think he really is as bad as his record would look like. And a team to look out for here would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are currently waiting on Aaron Rodgers to give him an answer if they're coming back, if he's coming back to play for another year. And if he doesn't come back for another year, this is a team that could be waiting on a Ty Simpson fall in the draft, which also may not happen. So let's say it's the end of day one. The Steelers don't have their quarterback on their roster. They know Rodgers isn't coming back. They don't have Simpson. I could see them picking up the phone and asking the Saints, is Rattler available? To which the Saints might say, yes, let's make a deal right now, or let's wait a little bit. And then in day three, if there's a quarterback that the Saints like that is falling, maybe then they pick up the phone and say, hey, would you do it for a 4? And then they pick that Drew Aller or that Garrett Nussmeier that might be falling that the Saints might like as a high upside prospect. The second player that I could see the Saints moving on from is Pete Werner. And again, another guy that has value for other teams. I could see the Bears with Dennis Allen potentially looking at Pete Werner and trying to bring him in from then. And this would make a lot of sense if the Saints do end up picking a Sonny Styles, an Arvell Reese, whether it's through a trade up or he falls. If they pick that linebacker, I could absolutely see Pete Werner being on the block. The one player that I really didn't think too much on until I was doing some research on this topic and just seeing what other fans were thinking is Justin Reed. I've seen some fans across the league that aren't Saints fans basically say that Justin Reed is somebody who they would potentially like to have on their team, and for good reason. The guy's good in run defense. He came in here as a leader. He's a guy that is someone who you can rely on, and he did start off the year a little slow last year, but everybody on the defense did. Everybody on the offense did. The entire team started slow last year, and it's hard to fault him for that. I would prefer the Saints to keep him, but if the Saints do end up getting a Caleb Downs, or in a mock that I saw, the Saints ended up trading back with the Cowboys at 12, and they ended up getting Thieneman, who's another star safety in this class, that may make Reed available. And if that does happen, and you can get a valuable pick for his replace, for him to replace a special teams player that you may have lost, or get somebody who you might have a lot of faith in as a developmental prospect, or even to use that pick to package and trade up in this draft or in 2027, it is definitely something that you should be looking into. Which brings me into the last one. And it pains me to say this because I love Carl Granderson. I think the world of Carl Granderson. If the Saints draft Bain, Bailey, or Reese, he immediately becomes available in my eyes. He's on a team-friendly contract. He's somebody who brings a lot of value in a 4-3 or a 3-4 defense. And before anybody says it, yes, his sack numbers were not that great last year. And that's saying that with Cam Jordan and Chase Young both eclipsing 10 sacks. It's kind of like that star-studded left wing or right wing in the NHL who always produces, and then there's a scheme change. And now all of a sudden, he's not getting a point per game pace. He's maybe getting 60 points, but he's playing phenomenal defense. His back check is great. His forecheck is fantastic. He's not getting the points, but the advanced statistics show you that he's doing well. That is the Carl Granderson that you saw last year. It's the best comparison I can think of because he absolutely might not have gotten the sack numbers, but he was the best edge on this team at dropping back in coverage. He was the most well-rounded guy who was able to play in coverage, pressure the quarterback, play the run. He did it all last year, and he did it all extremely well. So maybe the really attractive numbers weren't as high as you're expecting them for him and for what he's shown, but he's definitely somebody that I would expect to still be available via trade, and somebody that I would expect to have a high demand if the Saints made him available via trade. All right, the next thing I want to pivot over to is the over-under lines that I'm starting to see across the NFL. And as a Saints fan, it's a good, humbling thing to look at before you get your hopes up a little too high this season. Not saying that there's no reason to get your hopes up. I'm just saying maybe look at what the rest of the league and what the experts are viewing the Saints as before you start putting some bets on the Saints to win the division and to make it to the Super Bowl. Right now, the lines that you're seeing are that the Saints are third to win the division behind Tampa Bay, Atlanta, then New Orleans is at third, and then the division winner from last year, who also had a very strong offseason by all accounts, Carolina, is fourth. In the NFC, the Saints have the fourth worst odds to make the playoffs. Across the NFL, they have the sixth worst odds to win the Super Bowl. That's tied with 10 other teams. So six is the worst case scenario, and then like about 15th would be the best case scenario. And that's tied at 100 to 1. Their win total is set at 6.5 wins. So when you're looking at what the Saints are as a Saints fan, you might be looking at the division. You might be looking at the fact that they have the second easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. Their teams that they're playing next year combined for a 434 win percentage last year. You can obviously never make a bet based off of last year, though, right? You would look at any team that had the Patriots on their schedule and say that's an easy win, and the Patriots end up making it to the Super Bowl. So you can't make that bet based off of that. But the argument that I've heard against the Saints is that the strength of schedule from last year towards the end of the year was a bit of fool's gold. The Saints ended up winning 4 of 5, but it was against bad teams. What are the Saints actually going to look like this year? My only rebuttal to that is the Saints also were not a good team. They had a lot of injured players. Their offensive line was hurt. Chris Olave was the only wide receiver that was on a roster for a lot of those games, on a roster to start the season for a lot of those games. They were on running backs 4, 5, and 6, right? This is not a team that had a lot of starters playing towards the end of the year. So yeah, they played bad teams, but they also weren't necessarily great teams, regardless of what some fans of other teams might be saying whenever you're talking about Tyler Shuck being a rookie of the year candidate and them throwing out, oh, well, he had Chris Olave. And Chris Olave and who? Juwan Johnson, absolutely. Yeah, he ended the year strong too, but that's about it. So I wouldn't write them off. But again, I just wanted to bring up the odds because I'm starting to see a lot of Saints fans really start to make some bold bets on social media. And again, I'm not a betting expert. I will never give you betting advice. I'm making that clear right now. Do not ever take anything I say as something that you should bet on. I have done betting before. I am not good at it. I am very transparent on that. My FanDuel account is in the negatives. So, um, I don't bet like the house, but I do have a negative total for wins. I do it for fun. I put like $10 in my account every year, and then once I run out, I'm done. I'm not that good. But maybe hold off on those Super Bowl bets that you're seeing whenever the sports books who do this for a living, this is their job, are saying the Saints are at 6.5 wins. The next topic, kind of aligned with what I just went over, is I have started to really hone in on a lot of Saints hot takes from the fans. And there are three hot takes I want to go over real quick, starting with the fact that the team has started to bring in wide receivers left and right. And that means the Saints are being obvious and they're drafting a wide receiver at pick 8. And the reason why I wanted to bring this one up is because it is always important to remember this is smokescreen season. Top 30 visits are not always reported on. Top 30 visits are not always a tell-all. And just because the Saints are bringing in Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, and a couple other wide receivers, doesn't mean they're going wide receiver in round 1. There are a lot of reasons you do top 30 visits. You could do, again, smokescreen season. You could be doing this to basically make other teams worry. Hey, they're bringing in Jordan Tyson, but I really want him. The Commanders want to trade down. Maybe we trade up to 7 to pick Jordan Tyson so the Saints can't get him. And now the Saints, whoever they actually wanted, falls to the Saints at 8 because the Commanders aren't going to take him. That's obviously one reason. Another reason is because you want to get to know these players. The draft isn't the only way a player gets added to your team. 5 years from now, 6 years from now, this guy might be a free agent or available for trade. If the Saints like him now, they might like him 5 years from now and look back on what they talked to him about and how these top 30 visits went. This isn't just a today, this year thing. And that's the one thing I really think fans need to stop doing is caring about 1 year from now. Everything with the draft is 1 year from now, 10 years from now. This is not just a 1 year prospect. Next year is obviously the most important year, but whatever they're doing right now, if Jordan Tyson comes in, he interviews well, they talk to him, they say they like him, they know they're not going to pick him at 8, but if he ever becomes available due to trade or free agency, and they want to just get to know the player a little bit better to know if they should take that swing, absolutely something that you're going to do using a top 30 visit. Think of what's happened with Kyler Murray. Number one overall pick. He was still brought in. Everybody knew he was going to be a number one overall pick. He was still brought in for other top 30 visits to talk to teams. They wanted to know the guy that might be available to them later on. The Vikings have him at quarterback now. They knew they weren't getting him at quarterback in that draft class because he was going number one overall. Everybody knew it. Did they bring him in for a top 30 visit? There's probably reporting on it. I didn't look into it too much, but you definitely have conversations with these players and you remember those when they become available. The second hot take I'm seeing is that the Saints are not and already have removed Jeremiah Love from their draft boards. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news because it's a very popular opinion, but I would be surprised if the Saints do not have Jeremiah Love on their draft board still. I would be surprised if all of the defenders that we have talked about the Saints getting in Bailey, Reese, Bain, Tate, or not Tate, Carnell Tate, the wide receiver from Ohio State, Caleb Downs. If Tate's gone, if Tyson's gone, Mendoza, those could be the first 7 picks. At that point in time, at pick 8, Jeremiah Love being the only offensive player the Saints might have a first round grade on, Jeremiah Love being the only player left that they might have a first round grade on, they're going to draft the guy that they have a first round grade on versus the guy that they have a second round grade on. I don't think it's going to happen. I personally am hoping they don't do it. I don't think you sign Achane to the contract you did to have him split carries with Love. And if that pick does happen, we'll talk about it then. Just know that there is definitely a scenario where the Saints are sitting there at 8. Love is the only player that they actually, no pun intended, love left on the board, and they pick him. So just be aware that if he's there at 8, he's absolutely an option for this team. The final take that I want to go over today is the Ruben Bain stuff. I'm seeing a lot of fans saying he's undraftable. Uh, I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's a good chance that the Saints probably already knew about this incident before it got reported on. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I listen to I read a lot of things, and it sounds like this wasn't necessarily a surprise. The part of the reporting that scared me personally is the anonymous source that said this is one of many issues that we are aware of, and we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And if that's the thought process, then I could see this being true. But I don't think that that becoming public, unless the Saints are really worried about the optics, I don't really see this moving the needle. If they liked him, I think they're going to keep him on the same exact spot on their draft board. And if he's there and he's number one, I think they still take him. I wouldn't be surprised if this does move him off of some teams' draft boards, or if there's more to the story that's not being reported and things are going through and they talk to him again and more stuff comes out about it that last time they talked to him about didn't come out and now he's coming clean. I could see that being it, but right now I don't think this really affects Thane. I don't think he has a draft day slide into the second round like I've seen some people suggest. I think he's still a top 15 pick, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him drafted by the Saints as well. As always, though, Houdat Nation, these are hot takes I'm seeing from social media. I would love to include comments from these videos into these takes to go over them. So whether you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. I would love to bring these discussions to these podcasts. Finally, the last thing I want to go over is round three prospects that I personally love. Again, not as a professional scout, but just as a huge fan of football, both college and NFL, just based off of what I have seen and what I think the Saints could use. Um, I've already discussed it, so I'm going to start off with Max Clare. He's the Ohio State tight end. He's almost always available in any mock draft I do for my personal mock drafts, whether regardless of which site I'm on. Max Clare is available like 99% of the time at pick 76. I understand that the team brought in Noah Fant to be the backup tight end to play with Juwan Johnson. I understand Juwan Johnson ended the year strong. Juwan Johnson's connection with Tyler Shuck seems very real. But this is going to be the fourth year in a row where we're starting off the season thinking we don't need to address tight end because Johnson ended last year so strong. And then the last 3 years, he ended up starting off very slow. Last year, his production picked up a lot whenever Tyler Shuck came in. Crazy. No matter how many times I say it, it sounds crazy. They were roommates in college. So, yes, they have a great connection. But at some point in time, you have to start preparing for the fact that maybe this is a guy, whether it's due to conditioning or whatever it might be, this is a guy who starts off slow, and you need somebody a little bit more reliable to be your tight end. And maybe you can hope that's no fan. But one of the things I like to do whenever the Saints sign or trade for a player is always look at the opposing team's reaction. So the fans of the Bengals, the fans of the Seahawks, whenever that news broke, I love to go in and just see what they're saying. And a lot of the things that the Saints fans were wanting Johnson benched for last year to start the season were a lot of what those fans were saying. Fumbles, drop passes, especially in the red zone. Those are things that if they get fixed and they get worked on, you don't need to upgrade the tight end position at all. You have two guys who could be starters for most teams in the league. This guy's going to be 23 next year. He's got a lot of room to grow, but he is very good in the pass game. He's got reliable hands, especially in traffic. That super famous Marcus Colston seam route, this guy runs it. This guy runs it well. He's pretty good in blocking. He can definitely get a little bit more consistent, but you're happy with him in the run game. So you don't have to worry about bringing him off the field for rundowns, especially early on in his career, which is a huge tell for a defense to be able to key off on. Somebody who I have loved really based off of every single game I watched last year on Ohio State. When they were on offense, I didn't notice Carnell Tate as much as I noticed Max Clare. I felt like he was always jumping off the screen, and I felt like he was always doing well. The other player that I want to talk about, we talked about him a little bit before, but Zachariah Branch would fill multiple roles on this team. He would potentially fill that speedster, home run threat, trick play guy on offense who you could design some plays around, get fancy with, and actually be able to break a couple tackles and end up going into the end zone on a slant route, right? That's something that I've been saying for a while. This team has been missing. If the team doesn't go wide receiver in the first two rounds and they still need that, he fits that mold. However, he is, by all accounts and purposes, the best returner in this draft class. And the Saints have a hole at that position. So even if he is brought in day one to only be a special teams ace while he grows into his receiver role, think of a Deontay Hardy, a very, very, very way lesser Tyreek Hill type of player who can come in, be a great return man, and grow as a receiver throughout his career as you develop him. That this guy is absolutely in that mold. As always, though, Who Dat Nation, I am very excited to see what you think in the comments. So please let me know below. If you enjoyed this video, press subscribe, give us a like, and share it with your friends. And we'll catch you next time.